Okay, morning everyone. Thanks for joining us on the second webinar in this four-part series. If you're joining us today from the UK, then I hope you've managed to get yourself set up for lockdown 2 without much trouble, and I hope it's not too hard on you. Don't forget, if you attend all 4 webinars in this mini-series, then you'll be in with a chance of winning a 2-bay NAS populated with 2 8TB WD drives, which will be just in time for Christmas. So make sure you signed up for the next 2 sessions. If you missed the last time out, then it was a pretty good session all around how to securely access your NAS over the web. So please do check that out on our YouTube channel if you missed it, where you can find all of these webinar videos as well as some directly published content that we don't put out live. Today should be another great webinar. Craig's essentially going to take us through everything you can do with the QNAP NAS in an attempt to see if you can overload it. So if you're aware already of how much you can do on a QNAP NAS, you'll know this is going to be a pretty fast session. So if you do have any questions as we're going through, please stick them on the chat window as they occur to you so that we can hopefully answer them while we're talking about that topic still. So Craig, over to you.
Thanks a lot, Tom. So yeah, today we're going to go through effectively the QNAP App Center, and we're going to try clicking install on most of the apps that we've got, specifically the ones created by QNAP. We've added a couple that are not created by us, so from our third-party partners, and we're going to go through them all running, demoing, showing you that they are actually active. They're not just icons for the sake of icons. We're actually running them all. And the cool thing here is that everything is going to be running that I'm showing you today. Everything is going to be running on this specific NAS. So everything is going to be on this one NAS. We're not running some of the applications on other NAS. I picked a mid-range NAS here, so just to cover off the spec of the NAS. This is our TVS-872XT. So the spec of the drives in this one, I've got 8 10TB WD Red Pros, really nice drives, 3D Active Balance Plus. They've got the NASware 3 firmware, so that you can get seamless integration, better reliability, and they've got a 5-year warranty, which is nice. And I've got a couple of SSDs added into the M.2 slots, and they're the WD Black SN750 NVMEs, just small ones, only 500 gigs. Just using them for a bit of acceleration on the hard drives, just to make things a bit snappier for some different applications that I'll show you. So to give you a view of the config of the NAS itself, so this unit has a 6-core Intel i5 CPU, and I've got 16 gig of RAM. So this is the exact spec that we sell it. I haven't added any extra hardware into it to make it any faster. You'll see a bit down the line, I have put an extra couple of things in the back of the NAS, but we'll come to that and why I've done that a bit later on in the session. So a lot of this stuff may not make, I guess, a huge amount of sense. Like, why would you run all this on one NAS? Some of the applications are very business focused, some are very home user focused, but the idea here is just to show you what you can do with one NAS. So we've got as many applications as we can get on it as possible running. So we're pretty much going to go through all these apps in order that I've got them listed here. So within the App Center, I've clicked install on everything that makes sense, and I've tried not to duplicate it too much. For example, if I've got one media server installed, I won't install a second one, just because that's a bit excessive to do that. The first one I'll talk about is our Qsync Central application. So for anybody not familiar with Qsync Central, this is an application that effectively turns your NAS into a Dropbox-like application. So Qsync, instead of having to use a cloud-provided service, so let's say like Dropbox, you don't have to pay to work with them. So I have a free Dropbox account, for example. It only gives you 5 gigs of space. If you pay a lot per month, you might get a terabyte of space. But in this example, I've got the full capacity available of those 8 10TB WD Red Pro drives here to play with, and I don't have any subscription charges to worry about. So with Qsync here, this is allowing me to have a laptop that's synced in. So if we go to the details here of the online user, I've got a user just called Webinar that's added in. So I've got the one device connected in. So I've got my MacBook Air sat next to me that's connected in, and it's doing syncs, and you can get some basic information. You can go through different management options. You can choose to have team folders. So any data that needs to be shared amongst everybody in your organization or your user group, you can have specific folders that are shared between everybody. And as you go through all the different options, you can share some things with Qsync, some things without. And the best thing is with the little app that you can install on the local machine, Windows or Mac, we also have options for iOS and Android. It can do an offline sync of the data. So if you did ever have to get on a plane and you wanted to work on some files that were on your NAS back at the office, Qsync would allow you to sync a select few folders directly with your local machine so that you do have offline access to it as well. So this is the first service that we've got running, so we do have Qsync enabled on this NAS. The next one is our hybrid backup sync application. So obviously we've covered this in previous sessions, so I won't go into too much detail on it, but one of the services I've never really talked about or demoed is that we've got Apple Time Machine support on the device. So I've got the Time Machine, I've got it enabled to work with the local QTS account, so every user that was to connect into the NAS can get their own dedicated bit of storage. So within the NAS, I've created a folder called Time Machine, and I've allocated that as the Time Machine backups. So if I was to scroll down here, I've got the Time Machine, and we can see that I've got the MacBook Air that's sat next to me doing a Time Machine backup into here. So right now with just the one machine backing up, I've got the one folder with everything in there for that backup. If you had multiple machines using Time Machine backup into this folder, you'd see all the different names of all the machines here in this location as well. So this data is encrypted by Apple Time Machines, so the data is not visible between users. So it is protected, even though it can all be in the same folder, the data is not shared between different users. So we do have the Time Machine service running on this as well. And all the other services can be enabled as well. If you wanted to back up other NAS or cloud sources, you can do all of that within this same app. It doesn't use a lot of extra resources to do the different options there. One of the extra options I've enabled in this NAS is our hybrid mount application. So hybrid mount allows you to mount a remote location. Now that can be another NAS, a shared folder on a different server, or it can be a cloud location. So I've got two connections mounted on this one. So if I was to go to the mount management on the left, we can see I've got my QNAP Google Drive account that's synced in. So there's a total amount of 100 gigs of cloud space there, and I can see all 100 gigs of that capacity directly in my NAS. And it's also shared over the SMB shares as well. So if I look here in the file station and look at the left-hand side menu, it's going to give me all the different options of things I've got synced, and we can see that the Google Drive sync is there as well. So even though this data is not necessarily directly stored on my computer or on my NAS, you can choose whether or not the data gets cached or not. So as I haven't accessed these two files are still in the cloud. So you see that the cache status has a cloud icon next to it. But I can always say, always keep in reserve cache. If that's a folder or a file that I want constant access to, then that's what I would do with I would sync that down locally so that it's always on the NAS, always updated. I don't have to wait for that initial download to come from the cloud. So you can force some files to manually stay on the NAS itself. Somebody here asked the question, Mike, did you create the folder called Time Machine, or is it created automatically? I created that one. So if I was to go into the shared folders of this NAS, if I scroll down to the Time Machine folder, I think it's on the next page. So here within the Time Machine, if I go to the settings of this folder, there's an option in here that allows you to say that this is the folder right at the bottom. You set this folder as the Time Machine backup folder. So the folder can be called anything you want. It doesn't have to be called Time Machine. You can set it up to be absolutely anything you want. You just have to tick this box. Effectively, ticking this box turns on the Apple Bonjour protocol or service, which allows Time Machine to discover the backup target. So if I was to go here and go into my Time Machine preferences, so when you click on select a backup drive within Time Machine, you need something that announces itself as the backup location. It won't just back up to any source, it has to be Time Machine compatible, and ticking this box effectively does that for you. Okay, so we'll come out of that. So that's how you do it. Thanks for the question there, Mike. So yeah, this is hybrid mount anyway. So with hybrid mount, you can do this. And I've also got another folder down here, which is virtual. on a different server. So I've got a different NAS here on a different IP address to this one. This one's on 50.29, this is on 50.5. So everything here is completely cached across the network. So I now have basically mounted in a remote network folder into this NAS. So I don't have to give users access to every NAS that I might have. I could mount the remote folders off the other NAS directly into here. And if we go back to hybrid mount, we can see we've got the remote devices section where that one's enabled as well. So that's very easy to set up the different options there with whether you want a remote device on your local network, perhaps it's in a remote network, or you want to use one of the cloud service providers that's there as well. We have that as an option. So one of the extra features I've got added here is Qsearch. So Qsearch is our way to do instant searches. So anybody familiar with a Mac would know that you've got the Spotlight search where you can hit Command and space and you can type anything to search on your local Mac. That's not very good when you're talking about network locations, because it has to go catalog the network location. And if you've got 50 Mac users in your office, each one of those Mac users has to catalog the network location. It's a lot of network traffic. If you can use Qsearch, it's much easier to find content. So here, if I was to type something like TSH886 and push enter, it's going to go off and find everything to do with that particular file name on the device. If I want to segment it down to just images, music, documents, PDFs, you can be very selective about when you find the results, and you can also include things that aren't over a certain age or over a certain size. You've got lots of filtering options, and when you click on the item, you can get a quick look at the file, and it will just pull up just a quick look of that specific file so that you can see it, rather than downloading the whole file. So it's created thumbnails for you as well, so it's very quick and easy to access anything within there. We do have some extra advanced features on it, but depending on the NAS you go with, this may be included, or you may have to go premium and purchase a license. It's quite a low cost, but you can get a license for some extra features. But for most people, the basic included options will be enough to search for files and find things. It's quite an intelligent search to go look through the different options that we have there. One of the extra options running in this NAS is our download station application. So this is an option that will download from a lot of different services. So if you were to add a download task, you can click input URL, or you can add torrent files. So if you didn't want to download the file directly to your local machine, maybe you wanted it to be downloaded, it's a very large file that will take all night to download, you can task your NAS to do that download for you rather than leaving, say, your laptop powered on. And then when you next log in, your NAS has already downloaded that file for you. So here I did a few torrent downloads. So I've got a few versions of the different Linux distros that are out there. So I've downloaded all those into the NAS, and it can sit there and it can seed the files back as well. So if your computer wasn't on at all times and you wanted to seed the data back, this is an option to do that. There's obviously, we don't put any restrictions on the types of torrent files that you want to add in here. If you want to put them in from any source, that's no problem. So yeah, we've got a lot of different options there, and there's even a BitTorrent search down there. That's a facility you can use to type in something. So if you wanted to go look for an Ubuntu ISO file, for example, you can just type it into the search box and we'll go find the links for you to download that in there. So download station 5 is running directly in this NAS as well, and that's on all the time, seeding the data. And you can set lots of different permissions in here. So here in the settings, for example, with BitTorrent, you can choose to have different options. You can set bandwidth limits on different things. You can say that you only want the share time to seed until it hits a certain time frame, or when a certain ratio is hit as well. So there's a lot of different options within here. And we even support RSS feeds as well. So if you wanted to do RSS updates from a particular site to grab any file that comes out at a specific time, it will automatically download the files for you if you ask it to. So that's Download Station. The next option is our photo management software, which is called Humaji. So Humaji is an intelligent photo application. It uses AI to sort of categorize the items that it's seeing in the different images that you've got. It creates thumbnails. You can add keywords to the different items so that you can search and find different items. And it will also do some very intelligent things with the AI, such as finding different things. So here we've got different options. We didn't put any people inside ours, so that one's grayed out at the moment. But for things, all I've done here is I've just added a bunch of photos into a folder. I've told Humaji that that photo is where my photos are, and it's gone off and it's decided to understand different things like animals, food, trees. You know, it's done all that automatically. I didn't tell it that these were animals or that these were cattle or anything like that. For example, if I go into the animal category, there's a dog and there's pictures of cows. But if I go over here to the cattle one, the 2 pictures of the cows are shown up. So it's very easy for you to go and find a specific item, and all of these thing tags that have been added, you can use those to create albums. So if you wanted to say have every picture of a lake that you've ever taken, you can create a smart album that will use the AI found content of the images to automatically create a smart album if you wish as well. So if we go back to the options, you can also put keywords in. So keywords, I created a keyword for dog. So here we've got 2 different options here. So there's a dog in that picture, and then there's a dog in the main picture. So you can create these and add the tags whenever you want. So when you're on a specific item here, you've got different options at the top. So you can go in and edit the tags on it if you want to add a different tag to it. So maybe you wanted to add another tag, like there's grass in this one. You can say I want to add the tag for creating the word grass. So that's now on there, and I've now got a second keyword that there's a dog and there's grass in that photo. So it's very easy to do. I've also created a smart album down here. So this smart album is showing me every picture that's on my NAS that was taken in 2015. So if you were to edit the album, we can see here, album name is 2015 pics, and I've got lots of different filters, and I've set to be the date taken is all the way from the 1st of January to the end of the year, 2015. No other requirements. I've just told it what folder I want it to go and look in. Everything else is completely set to any, so it will pick up any image that matches these criteria. And so here I've got an album that's been created so that I can see all the different options that's there. I see a question here from Danny. Does QMagie use much memory and slow down the NAS? It actually doesn't. It's once it's got the images loaded into it, it's actually a very passive application. Obviously, if you were to add in 1,500 images, let's say, it's going to go off and it's going to be doing some tasks in the background, such as generating thumbnails and trying to identify the things, the places, any keywords that were in there. For example, we had a customer last week that sent me in some Lightroom images from his separate software and wanted to know if the keywords would transfer into this software, if the tags would still work, and they do. So there's different options that you can get different items in there. And we've also got a places option here. So an unfortunate incident that happened not too long ago. So somebody bumped the car, but here, because it was taken on my smartphone, there's different information here, and it shows you where that incident was. So from the geo tag that's on the photo here, so you can see where the item is. And you can also create smart albums based on these geo tags. So if you wanted to set up a smart album that was to show you every picture that was taken in England or a specific area of England, you can very easily create a smart album for every picture for a certain set of coordinates as well. So yeah, that's Qmagie. It's a very, very cool piece of software, very powerful as well. So if you wanted to commit to putting your entire photo collection in here, you get some very useful extras added in and intelligence that works with it. Yeah, you've got a lot of different options there. And you can create normal albums or smart albums. The smart albums are probably a bit more useful because you can set a lot more customization on them, whereas when you just create a normal album, you really just say, I want an album of these pictures, and you go and pick some files. Whereas if you create a smart album, you can get creative with the use of the AI found tags that's there. I've got a question here from Dirk. It says, does Qmagie support live photos from iPhone? Great question, Dirk. Not sure. I will check after the session and get back to you on that one. A question from John that says, I have thousands of images in Humaji and it copes very well, including over mobile VPN access to my NAS. There we go. We've got a customer directly on the session that's already using it in his environment with a lot of images and says it works absolutely great. Really, the amount of images that's in Humaji doesn't really make a difference to the resources. It's when you're adding the images is when the resources are used, while it's preparing the content and sorting the things and keywords. Once the image is added into Qmagie, it's not really changing anything. You know, that image isn't evolving into something else. You know, if it was a picture of a dog, it will still be a picture of a dog in a couple of years' time. It doesn't have to rescan that file or do anything unless you make a change to the file or edit the photo. So that's the software. It's completely free. You can install it directly on most of our NAS. So yeah, very, very powerful with the AI component that goes with it. So incidentally, Qmagie actually has a sister app that works with it, which is called Qmagie Core, which it automatically installs in the background. So actually Qmagie is two apps running at once. So one's doing the AI, one's doing the displaying of the different photos. So the next one is a Plex media server that I've got installed. I won't go into too much detail on Plex because the last session in this series just before Christmas is talking about Plex in a lot more detail. So here we've got a few different items that I've added in. So I've added a few different trailers. So this is running on the very same NAS. Before we move on to Plex, I just got a couple more questions. Any limits on the number of tags by picture and total? I'll go check with the PM, the product manager for you there, Ace. I'll go find that out and get back to you after the session. I know I've put 50 tags on one photo before and it was absolutely fine, but I'll go and check if there is any hard limits there. Question from Nicholas about Humaji. Can it cope with the same image in two different formats? Yes, it would just be listed twice as far as I know. It wouldn't combine them into one, but you would probably have that added into the system completely twice. Again, I'll check with the product manager for you and I'll come back to you on that one. Maybe with the amount of questions here about Humaji, it might be worth doing a total session on Humaji in the future as well, just so that we've got a bit more information on it for you. So here with the Plex media server, so I've got it running. I've added a folder called movies. So within the movies folder, I've got lots of different items that are here. So I can click play on any of these items. So here, if I scroll through, maybe let me just mute it down there. So that's just playing absolutely perfectly directly from the NAS itself. So at the same time, it's doing everything we've talked about. So Qmagie is still running in the background, everything else. It's still doing every other task that I've said and the ones I've not talked about. So you can be a media server, you know, you could have had a smart TV in the other living room, playing files off that if you wanted to, playing video files, a couple of different machines if you wanted, different TVs playing content, mobile devices. Plex makes a great mobile app that works with it as well. So this is the Plex media server. And just an illustration, I didn't put any of these movie posters there. For anybody not familiar with Plex, all I did was put a file into a folder that I've got called movies on the NAS, and I named the file correctly. For example, with Tenet here, I just called that file Tenet space 2020, and then I put it into the folder that Plex is looking at for my movies. Plex will then copy and paste that file name into a website like IMDb or something like that, and it will pull back all the information about that movie. So if I was to click into it, all these faces of everybody that's actually in the movie, I didn't put any of those there. That's all there by Plex scraping the content from the internet sources. And all these files here are stored directly in the NAS. So none of this is actually online. Once it's added the movie, it downloads all this for local content. It shows you any related movies that might be interesting based off it. That works a lot better when you've got a lot more movies added into Plex. But if you wanted to see every movie that you have with Robert Pattinson, for example, you can just click him and it will show you every movie that you've got with Robert Pattinson. So it's very easy to use Plex. I see we've got a question there from Yemi. How do you update the Plex firmware on the NAS? Great question, Yemi. So here, if I was to go into the App Center, you can go up here and you can do a install manually. If you want the absolute latest downloads, you would go to Plex for the downloads. So if I was to go here to go to Plex downloads in my search, you can choose to download Plex from them directly and you get the much more updated versions. And you can pick different NAS options. So if you were to pick the Plex media server for a QNAP, you can click choose package. That will actually download the Q package that a QNAP needs to install it directly onto your NAS. Once you've got the file, you come back over here to your NAS screen and you just browse for the file and upload it into here and click install. It takes about 30 seconds to update the app. It's very good. And instead of having to go to the Plex website manually, if there is an update to the app, when you click into the Plex media server, you'll actually see at the top right sort of the activity. If there is an update, it comes up here in this menu and it will say that you've got an update and you'll see a little yellow up arrow next to the activity button there. So it will tell you as soon as you sign into this interface if there is an update, and it's very easy for you to do the update on the app for the machine there. I see a second question here from Daniel about Plex. You have a TS431 XEU, but Plex does not work. How is that possible? So you would just need a different version of the software. So if you went to the Plex downloads list, they would offer the download for the app in different configurations. So the Plex app that I'm using is the x86 or x64 version, so 64-bit sort of Intel AMD CPU version. But they do also make an ARM-based one as well. So as that TS431XEU is an ARM-based NAS, you'd have to download the ARM-based version of the software. It doesn't have quite as many features as the x86 or 64-bit version, but yeah, you can generally get it for most instances. If you go over to the Plex website and go to their own download section, they may have a few different versions available for you there. Okay. So the next app I'm going to talk about here is our QVPN service. So QVPN I covered in the session last time about securing your NAS and different things like that. But just to illustrate, I've also got it running over here. I've got a client currently connected in through our QBelt service that's running. So this service is also running in the background. So just to illustrate exactly how the NAS is doing with everything I've covered so far, if I was to go up here to our resources panel, we can see that I've only got 43% of the RAM used and the CPU's very little being used there. That's with everything that I've got running on it. So it's actually not doing too bad with all the different options that we've got. Now we're going to start moving into some of the heavier apps, the ones that really make a dent on the CPU usage and especially the RAM. So the first one here is our QVR Elite application. You may be familiar with our QVR Pro option. QVR Elite is the sort of next iteration that we've got. It's a bit more efficient than QVR Pro, so instead of needing 4 gig of RAM to run, we've done a lot of efficiency updates with the MongoDB that powers the backend. So now you only need a NAS with 2 gig of RAM, which should allow us to open up this software, our QVR software, to work on non-Intel or AMD NAS as well now. So the ARM-based NAS, the lower cost NAS, should now be able to use this. The only difference really is QVR Pro is perpetual licensing and it's subscription-based licensing over here for QVR Elite. But the prices are pretty good. So if you wanted to go check out our software store, we've got some different licenses up there. So within QVR Elite, I've got 2 cameras added. So I've got 2 free licenses. So I've got the 2 cameras added. So if I was to open up the client software, which I've got over here and log into this NAS, we can go and have a look at the sort of live view from these 2 cameras. So here we'll just connect in. So I've created a view of all cameras. So I've got the 2 different cameras that I've got. So I've got one looking at the front garden and another one in my office window here looking out. So here with this one, because I've got this one selected and it's a PTZ, a pan tilt zoom camera, so I can sort of change the angle of it. So I can move it to the left, I can move it to the right, or I can do some pretty intense zoom options on it as well. So if I wanted to zoom all the way into something in the distance, you've got a lot of different options there that you can use within the camera. So this is all built within the interface. And if you want those controls directly on the image, you can also have those controls directly within the screen as well. So you can really get some pretty good accuracy done there within the pointing and the zooming different options that we've got there. So very, very good, very powerful option. But this is the QVR software. It looks very much like the QVR Pro software. It's just a bit more efficient. The client software here is absolutely identical. The only thing that changes is it just says QVR Elite at the top left if you've logged into a QVR Elite machine. Somebody here asking, so Jerome is asking, does QVR Elite support QVR Guard and the backup NAS? Yes, it does. So you can add QVR Guard to either QVR Pro or QVR Elite. That's the same component. That hasn't changed. There is no cost for QVR Guard. So if you do happen to have a second NAS and you want to use our QVR Guard software, so should your main recording solution go down, QVR Guard will take over. Yes, it does fully support that. I haven't got it added on this one, but yes, it does fully support that. So that's our QVR Elite software. So this is also running directly in the NAS as well, at the same time as everything else that we've got. So the next one I'll talk about is Container Station. So Container Station is really the place where you can add different functions into your NAS, perhaps if we don't have a built-in app in the App Center for it. So for example, here I've got a Minecraft server running directly on this NAS. So Minecraft's, one of those popular games. We don't have an app to run that natively in the NAS, but here you can run that in the NAS if you want to, and it's so easy to set up. You literally click create over on the left. You search what you want. So if you were to search for Minecraft, up it pops, and you click create, and it will go off and install it. You can click into the item and it will give you things like the default passwords and things that you need to access the server, but you can change those after you've set it up. But this is a really easy way to add some different items in there. So the top one here is I've actually got a WordPress website running. So it actually gets added as two separate containers. One is the backend database that powers it, and the front end, the sort of web admin screens, is powered by a different one. So if I was to come over here to a new window and go to the WordPress site that I've got running, so here's a fairly basic WordPress site that I've got adding onto the NAS. So I haven't really put any content on it, but that's the main NAS. And if you go to the /wp admin on the end, that's going to take you to the back end where you can control all of this. So anybody that's not familiar with running blogs or anything like that, this is a great way to run blogs or a website. You can even do things like e-commerce in there. So this allows you to run it. So even if there isn't a native app, our QTS-based NAS have a native app, so you didn't have to run that in a container if you didn't want to. So it's a bit easier to set up the other way. But yes, there is different options there. I see we've just got a couple of extra questions here about QVR Elite. So Josh is asking, what exactly is QVR Elite? It's what we would call an NVR software, or a content management solution for your cameras. So it will allow you to have IP cameras, and it does the recording of them, and you can configure different items like motion detection events, how long you want the cameras recording for, things like that. Another question from Jerome. Is there an easy migration from Pro to Elite? The licensing can't migrate across, so if you've already got licenses, no. But if your cameras are currently working on QVR Pro, the exact same supported list of cameras will work on Elite. So with Pro, for example, you got 8 free cameras up to 14 days recording. So if that was fine, you can move those over to Elite. Just be warned that you only get 2 free licenses with Elite. You get 8 free with QVR Pro, and it's subscription-based licensing, but they are quite low cost. So yeah, very easy. Somebody else here is saying, you support the UniFi controller. Are the UniFi cameras natively supported in QVR? So not natively supported, no, not directly, but that would be really down to UniFi. They don't have a certification method, let's say, of adding different cameras. So if you were to add different cameras in the list, we do have a couple of Ubiquity Networks cameras there. I can add another one there to illustrate. But yeah, the different cameras that are added by them, you can still make them work. You just have to add them with an RTSP stream. So when you add the camera, you would have to add it as a generic model. And then over here, you've got generic RTSP. So with this one, you just have to make sure that you put the ports in correctly. So you need to get the RTSP URL. You can usually get that from the UniFi forums. Usually doesn't need a username and password to access it. You just have to match the port and the URL, and you can add the UniFi cameras into here, but they won't be added as a UniFi branded model on the left-hand side. But they do work. You can add them. There's a video on YouTube. I think the guy's called Crosstalk Solutions. He's actually done it on one of our NAS, and it worked just fine. Okay. So a question from John, just asking to quickly demo Pi-hole. So great spot there, John, in the container station. I did have our Pi-hole solution there. So if I was to access my Pi-hole that I've got running on the network here. So Pi-hole is a DNS filter. I'll type the wrong IP. It auto-filled too far. Here we go. So this is the Pi-hole that I've got running. So Pi-hole is a DNS filter, if you like. So on my network here, I have every machine with the DNS IP address pointed to 192.168.50.2. So if I was to illustrate that and I go over here to my network interface and go look at my interface, we can see that the DNS server is set to the same IP address as the Pi-hole. So any DNS request that I do is going to go to the Pi-hole first, and the Pi-hole has got domain lists added into it of things that are approved or not approved to be accessed. So for example, if I was to go do a Google search on one of our products, so let's have a look at the actual product I'm testing with here. So we can see here, I can see that there's a few here that are entitled add. So if I was to click the actual product page for QNAP, that's going to take me directly to the QNAP page. That's going to be allowed, and that will work. I'll click it just to prove it. So that's come through directly to our own website, and I'm able to access it. But now this ad here, say eBuyer, one of our partners that's selling our NAS, or Broadband Buyer here at the top, if I was to click on this link, because it's an ad, it doesn't go straight to Broadband Buyer. It's going to go via a Google Ad Services. So when I click on it, it says I can't connect to the server. So if I ever did really want to click on that, I can come to the Pi-hole here. I can go to the disable option, and I can just disable the Pi-hole for 10 seconds. So if I was to go back over here, go back a section, and now click on it, now the Google Ad Services link is working, and it's now letting me through. And when I go back to the Pi-hole, after the countdown is finished, it's now re-enabled. So now if I was to go back and click on one of these ad links again, let me click on the eBuyer one this time. Maybe theirs isn't a track link, so that one worked, but there was no ads that popped up, so that one was okay. But that will let you to go through the DNS filter option. So this is a really great option, and the best thing about this is because you can't do things like ad blockers and pop-up blockers on mobile devices sometimes, especially if you're, say, playing a game and it's full of ads. The best thing about this is if your mobile device is on the network and it also has its IP address set to the Pi-hole for DNS pass-through options, it will also block all the ads on your mobile devices. So it's a really great option. It's completely free, and it's very easy to set up as a container directly on the NAS, and it uses almost no resources to do that as well. Hopefully that covered it for you there, John. Got a question here from Yemi. Is there any disadvantage to using NAS hard drives only for all these apps, along with the QVR NVR software? Is there any disadvantage to using NAS hard drives? No, you can use NAS hard drives for doing anything within the NVR software. They're good, but there are different options. If you were using your NAS specifically for just doing surveillance applications, the drive makers like WD do a range of drives called Purple, which are dedicated for doing CCTV applications. So they're a bit more suited to doing the constant read writes that you get from having a lot of cameras that are added on. But NAS drives will work just great for that application if you're using your NAS for other things. But if it is primarily being used as a CCTV server, you may want to consider something like a dedicated Purple drive. Okay, is there any other questions here? Somebody's asking, is there any way I can see previous webinars? I use QNAP for time machine backup, and it saved my sanity on more than one occasion. Yes, Laurie, you can go, if you just do a Google search of QNAP YouTube channel, you should see 2 results there. The UK one is where we put up our webinars, but we do have our parent company based in Taiwan who produces a lot of good content from the product managers. That's also there on their own YouTube channel as well. Yeah, so I see a second question. I'll come back to you on that one, Gio. That's not really related to this session, but I'll come back to you and get in touch with you about that one. Okay, so now we'll move on to the next thing. So we also have in this device, I said at the start of the session, I added an extra card into the back of it. So the extra card that I added in is actually one of our Wi-Fi cards. So in the PCI Express slot in the back of the unit, I added our QWA AC2600. And we can see I've already got a wireless network set up on that. So if I go down here, so my NAS has antennas sticking out the back of it. So this is transmitting an access point. So I created an SSID. I created a password for it, and I've set this one to just be the 5 gig network. I've set the channel, and you can see I've got a client connected down here for about 18 hours. So that one's connected. Signal quality is fantastic. Adding access points to your NAS is very easy. So if I click on the add access point option at the top, it's going to look for any available network adapters you have. So I can see that the 2.4 gig antenna is available. So if I was to click next, you really just have to type in the password and the SSID, and after you can choose what channel you want once it's created. So it's very easy to add another Wi-Fi network into this, and our card does concurrent Wi-Fi, so you can do 5 gig and 2.4 gig at the same time, or you can have them completely separate. You can have them on the same SSID, you can have separate SSIDs, you can completely choose how you configure that yourself. So this is an option that we've got. So on top of everything I'm doing, you know, Plex servers, Qsync, time machine backups, download station for downloading torrents, Qmagie managing your photos. My NAS is also a wireless access point. So there's absolutely loads that you can do with the NAS, especially if you add an extra piece of hardware into it there as well. This NAS also happens to have HDMI out. So on the HDMI out, I'm going to have to do this a bit weird because I can't show you the HDMI out any other way. So if I go into the settings here and I click to open, I'm able to do a remote connection to what you would see if you connected the HDMI out of this NAS to a TV. So perhaps you have an older TV, maybe that's not a smart TV. So long as it's got a HDMI video input, if you connect the QNAP up to that HDMI output, you're able to see a bunch of different apps that we can install. So here's a selection of the different apps that you can add onto the HDMI output. Some of them, like HD Player, will allow you to connect to the media servers you have running on your NAS so that you can play the video files, music, content, whatever you have. And we've got different options like LibreOffice. LibreOffice is a bit like Microsoft Office. It's just free, mainly for Linux. If you were to connect a USB keyboard and mouse to the QNAP, you're able to interact with this screen on your big TV screen as if it's a computer and compose Office documents and do different things like that. Or simply open up the web browser and browse the web. So here we go, we've opened up the web browser. We can go through and we can see all the different things. You know, it's very responsive web browser that you can use for the network. So yeah, you could have a nice smart TV option directly on the TV, and it especially works well if you connect a USB keyboard and mouse onto the device. So this is effectively what you will see on the HDMI output from that NAS. So whilst doing everything else, that's also an option that's built into it. So one of the last applications I'll talk about is NoteStation. So with NoteStation, before I move on, let me just check if there's any other questions. Is it Wi-Fi supporting mesh, was a question from Jerome. If you had our new network adapter, yes. So we've got a Wi-Fi 6 option that's coming out soon that would be able to use that as well. So yes, you've got a lot of different options there with the Wi-Fi. You don't have to use a QNAP one as well. We have different options that you've got. I've got a question here from Mike saying, can you add a TV card to the NAS? Sort of, yes. I'll show you at the end, Mike. Actually, will I? I'll probably hold off the TV card question to the NAS for the Plex session we do just before Christmas. So I do have a TV tuner hooked up to Plex on my other NAS, but I'll show that in the session toward Christmas there. Okay. So here with NoteStation. So NoteStation is a very good collaborative tool for multiple people to collaborate. So if you have any familiarity with something like Google Apps that they have, where you can create spreadsheets on Google Drive, things like that, that lots of people can access. This is like that, but it's directly on your own NAS, and in my opinion, it's much easier to use. So here is a note that I created for our new TS-H2490 unit. So down here, I've embedded a couple of hyperlinks, so you can click on these and it will open up the products page. So it's an interactive note that you can click on, do things. I've also added different tasks here. So yesterday I was dropping the unit off to a journalist, so I did that, and we took some photos and screenshots for some social media. And then I've got a couple of other options. So once the 16th of December happens and I go pick the unit back up, I can come back in here and I can check that box. I've done that task. And once he's published the review, I can tick that and say we've put it up onto the network as well. I've added a few different photos. So the photos are very easy to edit as well. So if you click on the photo, there's an option up here where you can just draw things. So say you wanted to put an arrow, maybe you wanted to put a text box next to it, so you can put a text box and say test, and then you can drag the text box up so that it matches wherever you want the arrow to be. Go back and move the arrow to somewhere else. So it's really easy, and once you've done that, you just click save, and it's now going to embed that new update that you've done directly into the document. So it's really good for keeping track of projects, collaborating with colleagues. So if I was to click the info option on this this note, so if I go over here to info, the admin uses the owner, and I've also added the webinar account as a collaborator, so they can log in and they have edit access as well, so they can go in and change the different options that's there. Down a bit further, I've also embedded in the YouTube video link, so these play directly within the window as well, so that's directly playing straight within the session. So that's a very easy way for you to keep track of everything to do with a specific project that you're working on. See, we've got a question there from Mike. Can you do notes on a phone? Yes, we have a application for notes that works on Android and iOS. And there's also an extra plugin that you can have for Google Chrome. So the plugin for Chrome, you can say copy and paste something on a website, and you can paste it directly into a note using the plugin for Chrome, which is quite cool as well. So there's different options there. But Note Station 3 here is completely free. This is just a selection of things that you can do with it. You've even got snapshot options up here. So if you wanted to snapshot this, it keeps track of who made updates when down the left hand side. But if you wanted to snapshot the state of this, you can take a snapshot and it should say successfully snapshotted note. You've got a snapshot manager if you wanted to go in and set it to auto snapshot the notes, so automatically back them up as often as you want. You've got different options to do that as well. So yeah, very easy. Got a question from Rob saying, I've added 2 SSDs to my TS351. I'm not sure if it's configured right. I'll email you after the session, Rob, maybe get some screenshots off you so I can see how you got it configured, and I'll see if we can improve on that. So somebody here, Yves, probably saying that wrong, sorry, is asking, what is the best way to end apps or processes? So that's a good question. So if you ever wanted to quit an app, let's say, if you come into the App Center, you'll see a lot of different apps that we've got installed here. If you ever wanted to stop one of these, do the little drop down blue arrow next to the app, and then there's an option to stop it. On some of the apps, there's also an option to migrate it. So if you've got multiple volumes on your QNAP, perhaps you want an app like one that runs our virtual machines, you wanted that to run from your hard drive volume onto your SSD volume so it works faster, you can migrate it between volumes on some of the apps. Some must be on the system drive, but some you can move around as well. So there's an option here from Dirk. What format does Note Station 3 save its files in? So it is something proprietary in the NAS, but what you can do is you can export the notes. So when you're in Note Station, you're looking at a note, you can export it, and you can export it out as a PDF if you want to. So if you ever wanted to save this out as a PDF or anything like that, that is an option that you can do. So exporting the notes is very easy to do as well. So if you ever did want to do it, or you can even share the notes out to somebody else as well. There's lots of activities. You can even encrypt the notes if you want to encrypt them so that nobody else can access them without a password. But yeah, there's a lot of different options here. Printing them, lots of options. So yeah, there's a lot of options you can do there within Note Station. Question from Jerome about, is there a way to migrate your notes from, let's say, Evernote to Notes and vice versa? Good question. I will ask. I've not seen import options, so I will check if there's a way to do that for you, Jerome. I'll come back to it. So now I guess for the grand finale, after everything you've seen that's running on this NAS, so all the different apps, so the way I've counted it, that's about 15 different apps I've demoed. We've also got some extra services that are running. You know, I've got the antivirus software running in the background. The web server's obviously running as well for things like running the WordPress environment that we have. There's so many different things. I've even got an extra media server running there, a DLNA media server. Even though I've got Plex running, I've also got this running on it as well. On top of everything that we've gone through, we've also got our application called Virtualization Station. Now, Virtualization Station is a way to run virtual machines directly in the NAS. So I've allocated here 6 cores of the CPU and 1 gig of the RAM to a VM for Ubuntu. So if I was to click into here and click Start, now I'm making this same NAS. I haven't ended any other services. Everything else is still running in the background. So all those other services that I've got running are still there. It's still being a NAS. It's still able to back up laptops, share files, back up other NASs, back up cloud sources. But it's also now running a copy of Ubuntu directly in the NAS. So that's running another operating system. So not just our NAS operating system, it's now running a full copy of Ubuntu directly in the NAS that you can interact with and use. So that's fully usable as a proper computer if you wanted to. You can even output these VMs that are running in the NAS to the HDMI output of the NAS. So if you connected a USB keyboard and mouse, you could have a nice little development workstation or a PC for your children, something like that. That's a really good option that you can do. Now, on top of that, I'm leaving the Ubuntu one running, but why don't we just go ahead and fire up a copy of Windows 10 as well in the same NAS? So whilst running all those different tasks and services that we've done within the NAS, I'm now asking it to run 2 separate virtual machines, and not just lightweight Linux ones. This is a full-blown copy of Windows 10 that's booting up now, and it boots up pretty quick, considering everything else that's running inside that NAS, all the different applications that we have. That's now got 2 separate virtual machines running. So just to illustrate, while that's booting up, I didn't close Ubuntu. That's still running there in the background. So the Linux operating system is still running directly in the background whilst I've got Virtualization Station with Windows. So there's my Ubuntu, and over here is the Windows 10 that's logging in. So yeah, very, very powerful. Got a question from Laurie. I would like to access and try Linux. Do you have any websites that could help with this, please? I can send you something after the session, Laurie. If your NAS supports Virtualization Station, it's incredibly easy. Of course, Windows wants a wizard or an update. There we go. Somebody else asking here, John's asking, does the web server need to be running to allow for managing the NAS in the web browser? No, that's completely different. The web browser service in the NAS control panel is for the web server running on port 80. The NAS interface runs on port 8080 and is a completely different service. Somebody's saying, can you transfer a Windows OS running in Parallels to a VM on the NAS? Yes, you can do that, Dirk. You can transfer a Windows OS from Parallels or something like VMware Workstation. There's another one. I forget the name of the other one. But yes, you can do them. The only thing we would ask is, so if I was to just close out of these two VMs, I'll leave them running, is when you go to an import a VM, there are some options here. So it must be an OVA, OVF, VMX, or the QNAP one, QVN. So long as you can export it from your other hypervisor in one of those formats, we can import it directly into our hypervisor that's running here as well. So yeah, those two are running. Now, if we go and look at the state of this resource monitor, we can see we're only using 19% of the CPU and 63% of the RAM. So there is still room to grow. I could fire up another couple of VMs, install another 10 apps. There's a lot of capability left. And as I said, this NAS isn't necessarily the absolute top spec. It's not the lowest cost one, but it's right in the middle there, a mid-range NAS with the 6-core i5. So very, very powerful device. If you add all these different services, you've really got a lot of eggs added into one device. You know, you've got a lot of different functions that it can do for different options that you might have. Somebody here is asking, Mike, the Pi-hole you were running in a container, is that the same as a VM you're showing now? No, so containers are like lightweight VMs. Every container that you run, a lot of them would have a shared resource. For example, if you were to run one copy of Linux and install 50 applications on it, well, there's no duplication there between the applications as such, because the Linux environment it's running in is shared between all the different apps. But if you were to run one copy of Linux and then install one app and then install another copy of Linux for another app, you're now running 2 copies of Linux, which is quite inefficient. So Container Station is effectively the base Linux environment, and the Dockers or the containers that you add in there, like Pi-hole, like the Minecraft server, they're just like apps that get installed, but they're completely separate from everything else. Each one can have its own complete separate IP address and settings. They're not linked to each other at all. So it's a very easy and lightweight way to add different apps. Somebody's saying, is there any tutorial to set up Pi-hole on Docker on Container Station? If there isn't, Ace, I will create a couple of steps for you to do it. It's really quick and easy to do. I did it for my colleague in about 3 minutes, I think, a few months ago. It was very quick and easy to do. Somebody here is asking, can I duplicate my current Windows laptop as a virtual computer to QNAP Virtualization Station? You can. You would need a tool to basically do a physical to virtual conversion of your operating system. We don't supply that tool, but I can send an email after the session there so that you've got that information. What software you would use to do that? Someone here is asking, can you add GPU support to Virtualization Station? If you use design software, you can enhance with GPU pass-through. Fantastic question. Yes, you can. So there is different options that you can do within the Virtualization Station, but yes, in others over here, where is this? Oh, I can't do it on this one because this one's already got a GPU built into it. If I had an unused GPU, there's an extra menu over here for the GPU. If I was to go into a VM, let's have a look at the VM, go to the settings on it. There is options to add PCIe things like GPUs and options into it. It won't let me change the settings while I'm in here. But yeah, there are different options that you can add. So once you've got a spare GPU, there'll be an option down here that you can add it. So over here on video, I've got type VGA, but there'd be another option down here if you wanted to add a device. So you can add a device. The device can come from a PCIe location and you can add it. So yes, you can do GPUs dedicated to a virtual machine if you wanted to. some other questions. Is it possible to make cloud backup of the Time Machine backup file with HBS3? Technically, yes, you can, because it's just in a shared folder. So you could create a hybrid backup Sync 3 job for the Time Machine shared folder to back it up to the cloud if you wanted to, yes. And somebody said DLNA, I saw you are running Plex. Is it easy to also use iTunes and Sonos? Yes, so Sonos just needs a DLNA media server, and for iTunes, we have an iTunes app that you can add. Mike's asking, can you share the setup of Pi-hole? Yes, so as I'm doing that for Ace, I'll do that for you as well, Mike. Okay, thanks for your email there, Johan. And John wants the Pi-hole manual. No problem at all. I will send that across to you all as well. Okay, I'll hang around just for a couple more minutes, see if there's any other questions. But yeah, if anybody wants to ask any other questions after the session, you can email us at uksales@qnap.com. And in a couple of weeks, we've got the next webinar, which should be about our enterprise desktop with a performance demo, which is pretty cool to see. One of the new desktops that I haven't even seen yet, so hopefully that comes on time. And the last session before Christmas will be on how to use Plex in a lot more detail. Really, everything you need to set it up on a QNAP NAS. So that the start of the session will be without Plex installed, and I'll add Plex, install it, configure it, set it up, and you can see the process it goes through about adding files and different content to it as well. So that'll be a good one. Gio, about the question about QGD, I see your question. I'll export a report at the end of the session, and I'll come back to you after the session on it. Don't worry, I've got your email address, and I know the question. So yes, there's a YouTube channel, the official QNAP UK YouTube channel. I don't know the link off by heart, but if you just do a quick Google for QNAP UK YouTube, it usually comes up for me when I go there. So yeah, you've got the option here that you can go, and then all the webinars and sort of videos that we've done so far will appear in this list. So the webinar we did from a couple of weeks ago is there. So yeah, you can go through and have a look at all the different webinars that we've got, and some ad hoc videos that we've done as well. Okay. Tony's asking a question about QFiling. No, I didn't do QFiling in this session, Tony. It is installed, so just as a reference, that is one extra app that's installed. It's just I don't have any rules created in it, but QFiling is a really good tool that allows you to automate tasks on the QNAP. So you can set rules here, such as maybe you've got a folder called upload where you've got some customers uploading files to you. You can say that if a file gets uploaded into this folder, I want you to move it to this folder that's private, that's not open to the outside world. You could have any file that's older than 3 years old, please delete or archive off to this location. There's a lot of different options. It's a very powerful application, QFiling, but yes, that's in there as well. It is running in the background, so I guess that makes it even more impressive. There is another app. I just haven't created any rules within it, but I did have it installed. And maybe we'll include QFiling on a different session. There's a lot to cover in QFiling, so I just didn't have time for this session. Yes, Jerome, I'll send you the email as well. Okay. I think we'll probably end it there. I'll export a report after this session, so I see everybody's questions. If there's anything I didn't answer, I'll send you an email directly. I think a generic email will come out. I think we might be sending the Pi-hole questions out on the generic one for everybody, because everybody seems very interested in that. So yeah, give me some time just to create that. If I can't find anything that's sort of ready to go, I'll just create a one-pager. It's really quick and easy to set up, so it should be easy for you to do that. Okay. Thanks a lot, guys. See you in the next one in a couple of weeks.